Imagine a remote cabin in the mountains of Idaho, surrounded by federal agents and echoing with the sound of gunfire. This was Ruby Ridge in 1992, where a deadly standoff between the federal government and a private citizen shocked the nation. At the center of it was the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives. But Ruby Ridge is just one chapter in a story filled with controversial decisions, high-stakes operations, and deep-seated debates about government power and individual rights. Today, we're unraveling the history of the ATF from its earliest days to its most infamous moments. The ATF's roots trace back to the 18th century, when Congress imposed excise taxes on distilled spirits to generate federal revenue. This led to the creation of the Office of Internal Revenue in 1862, tasked with combating tax evasion on alcohol and tobacco products, setting the stage for what would become the ATF. Prohibition amplified federal enforcement efforts. The Treasury Department's Prohibition Unit worked to suppress illegal alcohol production and distribution. Despite their efforts, organized crime flourished, with infamous figures like Al Capone leading the illegal liquor trade. The era revealed the challenges of enforcing unpopular laws and laid the foundation for the ATF's modern enforcement role. When Prohibition ended in 1933, the focus shifted toward firearms regulation. The National Firearms Act of 1934 introduced federal controls on machine guns, short-barreled rifles, SBRs, and other weapons deemed dangerous. It was the federal government's first significant attempt to regulate firearms. The NFA established categories to regulate firearms ownership, including machine guns, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, any other weapons, and suppressors. In 1972, Treasury Order 221 formally established the ATF as an independent bureau within the Department of the Treasury. This transformation centralized its responsibilities for regulating firearms, alcohol, and explosives, solidifying its identity as a key federal enforcement agency. The agency's evolving role was significantly influenced by the Gun Control Act, GCA of 1968, a landmark piece of legislation passed in the wake of the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., and Senator Robert F. Kennedy. The GCA was designed to address the proliferation of firearms by tightening regulations, including mandating serial numbers on firearms to aid in tracking, regulating interstate sales of firearms, ensuring transactions only occurred between licensed dealers, expanding the categories of individuals prohibited from purchasing or owning firearms, such as felons, fugitives, and those adjudicated as mentally ill, implementing age restrictions for firearm purchases, requiring buyers of handguns to be at least 21 years old. Now let's take a look at some of the controversies that have shaped the ATF we know today. Ruby Ridge began as an ATF investigation into Randy Weaver, accused of selling 2 illegally modified shotguns to an undercover agent. When Weaver failed to appear in court for the resulting charges, federal authorities issued a warrant for his arrest. The situation escalated into an 11-day standoff at Weaver's remote Idaho cabin. During the siege, Weaver's 14-year-old son, Sammy, was killed in an exchange of gunfire, as was a U.S. Marshal. The following day, an FBI sniper fatally shot Weaver's wife, Vicky, while she held their infant daughter. Public outrage over the siege led to widespread criticism of federal agencies, including the ATF. A subsequent Senate investigation revealed poor communication, overreach, and questionable tactics. Ruby Ridge became a rallying point for anti-government sentiment and prompted changes in federal law enforcement policies, including stricter rules of engagement. In Waco, Texas, the ATF executed a raid on the Branch Davidian compound to serve warrants for alleged firearms violations. The initial raid devolved into a firefight, killing 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians. A 51-day standoff ensued, culminating in an FBI-led assault that ended in a catastrophic fire, killing 76 people, including children. The Waco siege remains one of the most controversial events in ATF history, with critics arguing the agency's planning and tactics were deeply flawed. Investigations highlighted significant operational failures, further damaging the ATF's reputation and fueling public distrust. Post 9/11, the ATF was moved to the Department of Justice under the Homeland Security Act of 2002, a legislative response to the evolving security landscape after the September 11 attacks. This transition marked a significant shift in the ATF's mission and operational priorities, aligning the Bureau more closely with federal law enforcement initiatives focused on counterterrorism, violent crime, and homeland security. The move symbolized the federal government's recognition of the interconnected nature of firearms enforcement and national security. By becoming part of the Department of Justice, the ATF gained enhanced access to intelligence sharing networks and interagency collaboration frameworks, particularly with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Department of Homeland Security. This allowed the ATF to better address threats involving explosives, firearms trafficking, and criminal organizations tied to terrorism. From Prohibition to Waco, Fast and Furious, and modern firearm regulations, the ATF has played a pivotal yet polarizing role in U.S. history. Its actions raise enduring questions about government authority, individual rights, and public safety. What do you think about the ATF's role in history? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into America's most controversial stories.